It's time for Friday coffee with your mortgage man, Eric. All right, so today's topic, man, you got to check this out. Manufactured housing. And before you hit the delete button, please know this, that sometimes, most of the times, most agents out there are going to do a manufactured housing somewhere along their career. And when they do one, most agents, not all, are usually lost in the fray because there are a lot of different moving plates that happen when it comes to lending on manufactured housing, and therefore the buyers and the sellers are usually lost in the fray as well. They're not being represented well. Very, very few realtors know how this plays out, and very few lenders know how to deal with manufactured housing as well. So tuck this away for future reference, right? If you get a manufactured home on the buy side or the sell side, this will come in handy, or just give me a call at 602-757-2171. Manufactured housing. The first thing we got to understand and start doing is use the correct terminology. We have mobile homes, we have manufactured homes, and we have modular homes. And these three terms get used so ill that it makes me sick. Mobile home. Mobile home is exactly that. It is mobile. That means it has a hitch on, it's got wheels on, it's going to move. It's mobile. It's going to go from one place to the next. Manufactured home is when you have had a mobile home and you've turned it into manufactured, taking the hitch off, removing the wheels, the axles, putting it on a foundation, if you will, which is just usually jacks and a support system or tie downs. That makes it a manufactured home. Manufactured home being that it's also been made in a plant somewhere. Same with mobile. It's made in a plant. They assemble the entire home on an assembly line in a plant, and then they put it on a tractor trailer. You've seen them on the freeways, right? They take up 2 lanes and wide load, and they take it and put it on a property. That is a manufactured home. Modular home is when they bring the pieces to the site, to the lot, and they assemble them there. Modular home is usually, 10, 12 or more pieces that they bring to the site, and people are assembling, workers are assembling them there. Modular home is viewed upon the same as a single family residence. So it can be a little tricky with modular homes. See them a lot in the southeast. Don't see them a lot here in Arizona. But just to distinguish the difference, mobile, manufactured, modular. Way different things. So let's get into manufactured housing. What are some of the protocols and requirements that you have to have on manufactured housing? Here we go. It's got to be newer than June 15th, 1976. Anything prior to that's called pre-HUD, and you're not going to get a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, FHA loan on it. Sure, you might be able to get hard money. Most of the times they're paid for in cash. Next, you have to own the land that it sits on. Therefore, it can't be in a mobile home park where you pay a $400 or $500 monthly rent fee for. Got to own the land that it sits on. Some people say it's got to be at least a double wide. Sometimes that's true, depends on the lender you use. Some lenders cannot do single wide manufactured homes. I can do single wide manufactured homes. They do get tricky. There's some overlays that go into single wide manufactured homes, especially if it's conventional. It's almost impossible to do conventional single wides. It's a whole different caveat of lending and getting into single wides. Next, you can't change the construction of the manufactured home, the dwelling itself. So you can't blow out a wall and put an add-on. And yes, you can have a screened-in porch. You can do a patio. You can do those things, but you can't blow out a wall and start doing add-ons. It becomes a hybrid home. You're not going to get financing on it again unless it's hard money. So they are some of the biggest issues that we see with manufactured housing. Now, the most important part is when you get into the lending side of it, what are you going to need to do? And I coach my agents through this on day one. Before you make the offer, there's some things we need to know on how to do and how to negotiate these items. These are big ticket dollar items that we need to negotiate on day one going into it. Biggest thing is the structural engineering report, which includes the engineering certificate. That's in the report. The report is going to have these diagrams, and we put the jack here, and we put a tie down here, and and it's usually 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-page report, very detailed. And this can run anywhere from $600 to $2,600. Depends on how big the manufactured home is, how much in repair, disrepair it is, how many tie downs and straps and jack systems they need to put in. Is how much it's going to cost. Generally, most of the times, we're $1,000, But look, that's $1,000 that you should be talking about on day one before you give the contract to the lender, and the lender says, "Hey, who's taking care of the structural engineering report?" Right? So generally, the seller takes care of that. Most of the times. A buyer can, but I'm just saying most of the times the seller, because it's their property, is coming to the table saying, look, my property is sellable, it's marketable, it's ready to be put on the market. I have an engineering certificate that this foundation meets HUD's minimum requirements. Now, well, what if we're not doing an FHA loan? Because that's HUD, right? Not necessarily. Because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac has adopted the same policy as FHA HUD has. We need to have a structural engineering report. We got to have the engineering certificate. It's got to be in the file. And I can take you right to the MRI guideline book and clip it out for you. If you don't believe me, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac has adopted the exact same policy as FHA HUD years ago. Now, this is where it gets tricky. What about VA? Ironically, VA has not adopted the FHA policy, the HUD policy on needing the structural engineering report, unless, this is right in the guidelines, the VA appraiser states otherwise. And then you're right back to square one. Now, I'm going to put a little story in here for you. I had a person that I was friends with for a number of years. They were looking at buying a home, doing VA, going manufactured, and they chose a realtor that I didn't know. And this person, by the way, had a number of realtor friends. And why they chose to go outside their sphere of influence is beyond me. Nonetheless, they chose a realtor who persuaded them to use their own lender, right? And in this process, at the beginning of the process, I made mention. I said, hey, who's going to be paying for the structural engineering report? And even though we're going VA, this is something that you should be representing your buyer in due diligence with for future marketability and saleability of the home, rather than cutting corners and taking a shortcut. Well, VA doesn't need it. Yes, it's true. VA doesn't need it, but you follow me here, right? When you go to sell that home, whenever that is down the road, 1 year, 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, you're now stuck with a fee. Where if your realtor representing you correctly and fought for you for your future marketability and saleability of the home, they would have went after this. And look, at $600, $1,000, have the seller pay for the tie downs, the structural engineering report. You're getting a better home rather than saying, well, my realtor says we don't need it, and why should we go through that, right? So you're making a shortcut. You're taking a shortcut, so you don't need to do as much work. But who are you hindering? The buyer. Because now when that buyer goes to sell, that home is only set up now for a VA buyer, another VA buyer coming in. Follow me? So guess who's going to get stuck with the fee whenever that time comes? Seller now going to have to shell out $1,000 to make it, if an FHA buyer comes in or a conventional buyer comes in, you have to shell out the money. So just saying, be careful on who you get to represent. You don't want an agent who's there to cut corners and go quicker, and when you're going to pay for it in the long run. See, I'm there to protect my buyer. all the way around. I'm thinking about what's going to happen in the future. Marketability and sellability of your home. You're not going to live there forever because we don't live there. We don't live forever, right? So keep that in mind. Engineering, structural engineering report is mandatory unless it's VA, but you should still be getting one with VA. Your realtor should still be representing you in that capacity. Moving on. Other things that you need is the HUD tags. What are HUD tags? HUD tags are two tags. They're rectangular, look like a little aluminum tags that are on the outside of the manufactured home. What happens most of the time is the owner has removed them, the paint stuccoed over them. God only knows where they are. 90% of the time, they're not on the home. You will need them. How do you get them? You order them through IBTS. And if you need a rush on them, they can cost as much as $200. If you don't, they might only cost like $80. That usually 50-50 is buyer's responsibility, seller's responsibility, but if you chose the right agent, we can negotiate those terms up front so the seller takes care of it. The seller should be taking care of it because the seller's the one that either painted over them or stuccoed over them or removed them from their own property, right? What do the HUD tags do? They tell you when the property was manufactured and where it was manufactured, serial number, manufacturer number. Those things are important for the appraisal. Appraiser's going to come out. HUD tags aren't there. Going to take a picture and show you there's no HUD tags here. Guess what has to happen then? You've got to get the HUD tags, order them, and it actually comes in the form of a piece of paper at that point. We send them over to the appraiser. They're going to charge the buyer $150 to do a reinspection. And they're not even going out and re-inspect it. All they're doing is saying, oh yeah, we have the HUD tags now. So there's more monies. Right now, more money's being spent on a re-inspection from the appraiser because the HUD tags aren't there. Your lender should be telling you about this on day one. Where are the HUD tags on the property? Probably not. Let's get them ordered today because whether we buy the home or another buyer buys the home, you're going to need them. So your agent representing you on the seller's end should be disclosing this to you on the listing presentation. And that's where I can come in and I can help out. Last thing is the affidavit of a fixture is done at title. What does that mean? See, when a home is a mobile home, it's actually held at the DMV because it's a mobile home, like an RV. It's like a car. But when you remove the axles, the tires, the hitch, you now put it as a piece of property. It's now registered as a piece of property. Excuse me. And that's where the title changes from a vehicle into an affidavit of a fixture. It's fixed. It's a fixed unit. And that's what has to, one of the things that we need in lending. Lastly, almost forgot about this, right? Here's a good one. You can't move the manufactured home more than once. So when it leaves the plant where it's being assembled and manufactured at, it can go to the site, and that's it. You cannot take it from that site, that plot of land, and take it to another plot of land and get financed on it. Huge rule. You just can't do it. And look, title's going to find out if it was ever moved. So that is it in a nutshell, guys. I mean, look, there's a lot that goes into manufactured housing. I could probably give an hour seminar on manufactured housing because I know it so well. But the bottom line is, not every lender. Most lenders are lost in the shuffle. Most agents are lost in the shuffle on this, which is okay. Just choose a lender that can help explain it to you, help navigate through the negotiations up front. Make sure that your agent isn't taking a shortcut if you're a VA buyer up front. I mean, look, I protect my buyers. I especially protect my vets. Let's put you in a position that your home is marketable and sellable to its fullest extent later down the road. With that being said, it's Friday Coffee with your mortgage man, Eric. Make it a productive day. We'll see you.